If your ink's too slow and your nib won't flow, here's one of the places that you can go. Larry is here to see you through with Mr. Announcer and Cubby too. It's Larry's Fountain Pen Reviews.
All right, folks. Hey, welcome to everybody that's on now and that will be on later, and to people that will see this video at a later time at their convenience. We'd like to welcome John Hubbard Jr. I call him the Moon Man Pen. Why? Because he's Moon Man Pens. Yeah, he'll blast off. So, anyway, Mr. John Harper, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. I mean, what did I call him?
Harper.
Oh, hello, John Harper. Welcome to you, too. We got another John Harper, believe it or not.
I've been called worse.
So, anyway, all right, Mr. Moon Man Pen. That's what I'll call him. Isn't that right, Landis? Yeah. All right, Mr. Hubbard Jr., here we go.
Oh, he's wound up tonight, AJ.
Welcome to the show. And tell us how you got involved in doing all this and got all this together and your journey into pens.
All right. So that's take it away, John. Okay. All right. Well, I got interested in pens because my mother's father lived with us when he was old, and the last couple of years of his life, and he had a fountain pen, and I was a little kid, and I enjoyed seeing him write with that. And when he died, his stuff was there in our house, and so it kind of stayed, and they let me put that fountain pen in my little desk drawer. And so from then until maybe 15 years ago, that pen was just one of my possessions. I didn't do anything with it. And one day I was in New York City and I found Art Brown pens not too far from Times Square. And I went in there and looked around and sort of saw fountain pens for the first time in a long, long time. And I asked them, remember the pen I had, and asked them about could it be repaired. And they gave me the name of a good repair person that they used. And so I sent the pen to him, and it came back like new. And it was an old 1930s third tier Bakelite flat top pen, you know. And it came back just beautiful. And that got me interested. So I started talking to my sister to see if she could find my mother's pen. And we did. We found it, and I sent it to the same guy and got it repaired. So now I've got two. I've got my grandfather's and my mother's. And then I just started getting interested in pens, and I have mainly during that time mainly focused on Schaefer pens because that's what my dad had, it turned out, and also mainly on Eversharp Skylines from the 1940s. And of course, a lot of those need repair, so I learned, I'm an engineer. I just had to learn how to do that. And I broke a few pens in the process, but on the whole, I got pretty good at it. And I mean, I can make a snorkel pen work again. So that's okay. And at any rate, so I collected them for a while. And now I'll do a side step here. My first job as an engineer out of school was working on the Saturn V moon rocket back in the 1960s. And so I was part of the Apollo program and the Skylab program and all of that. And I realized that as 2019 came along, that we were approaching the 50th anniversary of those lunar landings. And I thought, well, I'd like to do something to commemorate that. I didn't know what exactly. And I thought, well, how about a pen? And I looked around on the internet and I saw that some of the major manufacturers were coming out with commemorative pens. And I thought that most of them were genuinely ugly. So I decided to do something myself. And I just couldn't see taking a regular pen and maybe putting a decal on it that made it into a rocket or something. That just didn't make sense. So I started sketching out what I wanted to do, and I wanted to have the Apollo footprint, that famous footprint on there, and I wanted the pen to look like it was part of the moon. And it took me a couple of years to figure out how to do that because uh, the process that I wound up with was 3D printing. And finding a 3D printer that can print to the quality that is required to do this is hard. So the printer that I've been using is about a $3,500 3D printer, not just one of your basic ones like you see all the time. And then when we got the pen designed, and I didn't do the computer work, okay? I found young folks that could do that, but I talked the design with them and drew sketches, and they did it. And then we got the pen designed and then printed, and then it needed some pizzazz, and so we wound up with a paint scheme for it, where, let's see here, this is the pen. It's really hard to show these on the screen. There's the Apollo footprint right there. You can kind of see that. There are some craters up here on the cap, and then the whole thing has sort of the color of the moon, and it has sort of a sandy texture like you might find with the moon. And then I chose this black nib because I just thought the black looked so nice with the gray pen rather than a shiny silver nib or a gold nib even. And so I designed that. And 2 years ago, I finally was able to make these. And Larry was the first person who reviewed one. And since then, a few other people have reviewed them, but Larry still was my main man there, you know. And one of the neat things I did was it doesn't have a clip. And people say, well, what about a clip? Well, I didn't want to put a clip on it because it just would have messed up the design, I thought. And so I found, quite by accident, this pen sleeve from Rickshaw Bag Works out in San Francisco.
Oh, look at it. It has the footprint
and it has the footprint on it. They were already making these. So I talked to Mark Dwight out there, and I get those from him. And so when a person gets the Moonwalk pen, this is what they get. This is the one I carry all the time. I've been carrying this for 2 years, and you'd never know it's been used. These things they're really, really well made. And let me point out one other thing. The painting on the pen is acrylic. Okay, so it's a water-based paint. And you might imagine if I gave you a pen with water-based paint on the outside, how long would that last? You know, not very long, I think would be the answer. So we experimented with some different coatings to put on here and finally discovered ceramic coating. Mostly it's used in gun shops and things like that. And it's usually applied to metal parts. But we talked to the people in Oregon that make the coating, and I found a guy right here in Huntsville, Alabama, that's factory trained on applying their coatings. And so he applies the Cerakote clear ceramic coating to the pen. That's the last step. And it's tough. It doesn't stain. It doesn't scratch. I mean, it's like hard as rock, and it protects that. And this pen I've been carrying for 2 years, and I use it every day, and you'd never know it's been used at all. It's a remarkable material. And you know, all of that took a while. And yes, I sold a few of those pens with an inferior coating on them at the beginning. And I didn't know it was inferior, but once people started using the pens, they said, oh, this feels sticky or something. And so that meant I had to go back to the drawing board. And that's when we discovered the ceramic coating. So all the people that had bought a pen that had the old coating on them, I replaced their pens for them. That's just the way I feel about it. No, I don't want anybody to have anything that they're unhappy with. I've had one person break one part by accident out of 100 pens out there in a 2-year span. So this stuff's pretty tough. The 3D printing material, which is acrylic, is quite tough and not brittle. And the coating and everything has held up very well. And these pens have been bought by people. There's a funny combination of people out there that like space and fountain pens. And a few, I do make a rollerball version as well, but only a few people have wanted the rollerball, which is, I think, nice. But one of the things that happened when people like Larry reviewed these things, other folks said, well, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? How about something about Mars? And so that's what I sent Larry very recently, is my newest pen, which, you know, is it draws on what we did with the Moonwalk pen, but it's the Mars rover. And it has on the barrel, running up the barrel and up the cap, the tracks of a rover. Boy, this is hard to show. And the color is approximately the color of the Martian surface. It's got texture of rocks and sand, like we see from the rover pictures of Mars. And it has, I used the same nib, the same black nib, just because I think that just looks good. Oh, and Mr. Announcer has one there that shows up better than mine. But at any rate, those have just been announced, and Larry was the first person I sent one to. And I found from Rickshaw, I just found a plain sort of
rust colored
clay. They call it clay, and it's sort of the color of the Mars pen, as you can see if you squeeze the pen out of it. The pen and the sleeve are very similar. And I found that, are you familiar with Colorverse ink? Colorverse is a Korean company. They're distributed pretty widely in the US now. And they seem to name most of their inks after solar things, space things. They've got them all sorts of things. And one I found is called Martian. And it's just the color of this pen.
Perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. And they have these little sample bottles that are 5 milliliters of ink. And they're exactly like their big bottles. They're the cutest bottle I've ever seen.
It looks so cute. It looks tiny.
They do. They're just darling. And so I got a deal with Colorverse to get these at a little bit of a discount. And that way I can put one in with each pen. And so when a person buys a pen from me, excuse me, I dropped something here. When it gets to their house, it's in this just plain brown box. When you open it up, the pen's in there in its sleeve like that. And I stick one of my business cards and something from Rickshaw Bags in there. They have these cute stickers they have. And so, and then along with it, there's the Colorverse ink. And that's the thing. And I will say that I have been, I've been getting all of my nibs from Franklin Christoph. Oh, okay. Thank you. I've gotten all my nibs from Franklin Christoph over in North Carolina. Of course, they're YOLO nibs. I mean, and they're steel, and they do the black. They have the black version, and I liked it. But the nice thing I've had with them is not only are they very responsive when I place orders for nibs, but they test every nib before they ship it to me. So I don't have to worry about a nib that's going to skip and be unhappy for a customer. I use those, and I'm just, they're worth every penny, you know. And Larry has commented a number of times on how smooth they are, and that's just the way they come directly from those folks. It's marvelous, really. And
so, John, did you say you're from Alabama?
Yeah, Huntsville, Alabama. That's where we built the Saturn V, of course, and that was where my first job was. And after that, the space program kind of moved to California for a few years with the shuttle, but I stayed here, and I've done other things here. I never got, and of course, everybody in Huntsville follows the space program. It's just built into our DNA at this point. So yeah, but. Questions at this point? I'll be glad to.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the nib more? You unscrew the.
Yeah, these nibs, of course, are in that standard Jowo nib package. The pen, it's a converter filler, so I provide the pen with the Schmidt converter, which I think is the best one out there. And then the nib just screws into the section like that. So there's your whole nib assembly, feed and everything. And if you wanted a different size nib, it's as easy as what I just showed you. Just unscrew it, screw in another one. And so any Jowo nib would fit in here. And most people seem to want a fine, but I can provide any width, that anything from an extra fine to a 1.5. Those 1.5s are fat, let me tell you what. But that's just been a real pleasure, because the nibs from Franklin Christoph are so nice.
How long does it take the pen?
I couldn't hear you.
How long does it take to create the pen, and how many people are involved?
Oh, okay. If everything works right, I can make about 5 pens in 2 weeks, give or take. Basically, the first step is that a guy named Clay Williams has the 3D printer, and I tell him to print me some, and he prints caps and barrels, and the printing process takes about a day, about 21 hours to print, and he can print about 5 pens at a time. So then after that printing process, there's some curing with an ultraviolet light that takes a little while. And then at that point, I hand them over to Clay's sidekick, Lester, who does the hand painting for me. So, you know, Lester may take a day or two to paint those. It's all airbrush work. And then when Lester's done, I pick them up from him and I take them down to Robert at the gun shop. And Robert then applies the ceramic coating. That takes a day or two. And then you can't handle them for about a day or two at all, and really shouldn't do much with them for nearly a week, because it takes that long for that material to cure. So 2 weeks, you know. Now, you know, you can kind of do them. You don't have to stop. What I usually do is a batch at the time, like that, just depending on how many orders there are. So that's what I do. And you know, sometimes and I will say this, my team is fun, because that's the production. There's Clay and Lester and Robert and me. So it takes the 4 of us to make these things. But before that, there were 2 more people involved in the computer design of it. So there's a young man named Caleb who lives over in the next town over, over in Decatur, Alabama. And Caleb was a college student, and I found him because he was studying computer modeling. And so he does all the basic modeling for me. When he gets done, you've got I'll call it a standard torpedo-shaped pen, okay, just a plain pen. And then there's a young lady who uses a tool, a digital sculpturing tool, and she starts working on the pen at that point, doing things like putting that texture on it and putting the footprint into it and building the craters. I mean, she literally sculpted those craters on the cap. And then she did I give her pictures of what I want, but she just eyeballs that. She did the tracks on the rover and such as that. So those jobs are done before we ever print the pen the first time, of course. And so they spend hours doing that, and the nice thing is their files are all digital. So the woman that does the sculpturing is in Vancouver, British Columbia. And
Hey,
so
Canada.
Yeah. And she's from here, but she got a job up there and she loves it. So I keep on sending her the work up there, and she does it for me. But they're fun to work with. And, you know, they just, every once in a while, they tell me how much money I owe them, and I pay them. And it works. So it's been
Will.
fun.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
Hey, Joe.
Hello, Will, Joe.
Yes.
Happy Mother's Day, Lannis.
Oh, thank you so much, Will. And
Happy early Mother's Day.
have you got that David Oscarson on order yet?
Well, there seems to be an issue with that. I guess back order. I don't. I think it has to do with funds, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, that'd be fun to go over there to that. But hey, John, how are you? Good to see you, sir.
Good to be seen.
You do great work.
We're talking about going over the drum girls? Is that where you were going?
Yes.
Drum
Gulls is about 70 miles southwest of me, and
what a wonderful store that is.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of going there a couple of times. I don't get that way very often, but man, what nice people too.
Yes.
Yep.
It's because, John, my Grail pen would be a David Oscarson. And so Will mentioned the other day that he was going to go hang out at Drum Ghouls. And I said, well, while you're there, you can just pick me up a cool design that he's got going there, and, it will be square, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the joke is coming from.
Yeah. David Oscarson is very proud of his pens, I think.
Yeah, I think he does mainly work in gouache and enamel.
I think that's gouache.
Gouache.
Guilloche.
Guilloche. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Really?
Yeah, it's basically engraved sterling silver that they put a design into, very complex design that's repeated over and over again. And then he comes it with enamel. So then they fire and they get glass-like finish.
Yeah,
to it.
I knew that. I just
that's a complicated process.
Yeah.
Do they do the work on the silver by hand?
No, those should have machines that do
have
it.
A machine. Okay.
They have to be controlled by humans, but it's a machine that rides in a track and it goes up and down and puts the guilloche on. But it's I guess they could have automated ones, but not the ones I see have to be advanced by human operators.
Yeah, but the machine at least makes it very even. And
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's almost like engraving, basically.
Yeah. I tried something recently. I don't know. It's in the next room, but we used a laser engraver on a pen, on a acrylic pen, and engraved a pattern in it that looked like the old chasing, like they used to do back in the 20s on the black rubber.
Oh yeah.
That was a pretty neat process. You can program it with a computer, and it rotates the pen and engraves it with the pattern you set up.
They use it for nibs nowadays, just because it costs so much money, as you probably know, to make a die up for stamping something.
Right.
Expensive process. And so they use the laser engraver now to put their patterns into the nib, whether it's steel or gold or whatever. The problem is it leaves a rough surface behind it. It can become messy with ink.
Yes. And I noticed that even with what we were doing, that the in the bottom of the groove, where it's literally burned in there, it was quite a rough texture down in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, why don't you go ahead and tell them number 3 now?
Okay. I told Larry.
I might interrupt a little bit because I think Doc might get into it a little bit. He doesn't actually, well, I don't know, he might fool me, play that instrument. I know Jake does, but Doc may. But you never know about Doc. But go ahead.
Well, back before I introduced the Moonwalk pen, so over 2 years ago, I had been thinking about making a pen. And the design I had in mind, because my mother ran a music store. I played clarinet. I never was able to play a piano. I was just her piano delivery boy. But at any rate, I always liked piano. And I thought, well, I would design a pen that was a piano. Look, it reflected the piano. And I always liked grand pianos, so had to be black, of course, and shiny. And so here's the pen, and this was really my first design, but it got sidelined for the Moonwalk pen and the Mars rover. And this is a prototype, and as you can hopefully see, the keys are around the barrel. And you can see that we've got hands on there to play the piano, sort of jazz hands looking.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of the design, the cap right here where the cap meets the barrel, you can see that there's a curve there that I thought of that as reflecting the curve on the back of a grand piano. And here, okay, with the cap off, you can see that pattern where the keys end and the black starts sort of makes an ogive around the barrel, and there's a similar pattern down here at the bottom. The end of the cap, since we can 3D print it, we don't have to have a square end on it, has that same shape. You can see right here, it's actually curved, and it matches the pattern on the barrel. So when you screw the cap on, they line up like that. And this one has the same black nib in it that I've been using in all the other pens. But what I'm thinking about doing is offering a limited edition of these that would have a 14 karat gold nib in it. That would be my first pen with a 14K nib. So right this minute, in the next room, there are 6 of these that are midway in the process of being made. We've printed them, and the keys have been, the white has been applied in the keys. And next Tuesday, I'll take them down to have the ceramic coating applied on the whole thing. That's the glossy ceramic in this case, rather than the flat like we used on the others. And so at that point, I'll have a half a dozen of these, ready to start promoting. And I think, everybody seems to think that this is going to be a really popular design, because there are a lot of people that love music and pianos and such as that out there.
I agree.
So
let's see, Don does guitar, I think bass. Do you do piano as well?
No, I dabble with piano, just that dabble with it. I wish I would learn more, but it's for me, it was the only way to really understand, at least at some level, music theory, because music theory progresses from a piano and the linear notes. Whereas on the guitar, you've got linear notes, but the vertical strings don't, it's tricky to, when you think of a chord, a major chord, a first, third, and the fifth. On the guitar, it's like, wait a minute, you have to search out those different number patterns, but on the piano, it's the 1, the 3, and the 5.
Yep.
Very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very visual in a lot of ways, and as well as tactile there.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful instrument, and
oh yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking if I do that limited edition with the gold nib, I'm thinking of making one of those for each of the 12 tones in the scale. So there'd be a C, C sharp, D, E flat, and so on like that, one of each of those. And then maybe a longer edition of 88, one for each key on the keyboard. So keep it in the family there.
Have you thought about a price point for the pen?
Yes. With a gold nib, the cost to me of the gold nib is so high that I'm thinking that pen's going to have to be between $300 and $400 probably.
Oh, sure.
With a steel nib, you can cut the price easily by $100, maybe a little bit more. So it would be maybe $230 to $250, something like that. And then a rollerball can be under $200.
And how does that compare to your Moonwalk and your other 2 pens?
The Moonwalk, I started it. I had a little limited edition of those that just had a steel nib, 12 pens for $340, and they all sold instantly. to my surprise. And then I went with a regular edition at 270, and now I've dropped the price now to 235, and a rollerball is 195, and the Mars rover is 270 or 235, depending on whether you get the limited edition or the standard edition. There's really no difference other than the number on the barrel, but you know that.
So very reasonably priced.
Yes.
I like to think so. You know, somebody said, well, you know, that's, you know, $270. That's a lot for a pen with a steel nib. But they also pointed out that it's a piece of artwork, you know, because it's hand painted and a special design and such as that. So it's got some panache about it like that. That it's not just another mass-produced pen.
Sure, I agree.
So
who knows? Maybe you come up with a guitar pen.
Maybe a clarinet pen would be easier. They're long and flat.
Is that the piano pen doesn't have a clip on it, right?
It doesn't, but I'm thinking about offering. Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I originally I like the clean design here. And I didn't have a clip, and but I have a sleeve from Rickshaw that's got the piano keys on the outside. So I was thinking, again, you do the sleeve routine. But several people have said, well, what about a clip? What about a clip? And so in fact, here's one of the parts right here. I don't have it put together. A version of this cap that would have a way to mount a clip into it. So I could offer the pen with a clip or without, depending on what's.
So how about a roll stop?
I thought about that too. The only idea I had for a roll stop, I didn't want to complicate I didn't want to, you know, make it too busy, if you know what I mean. Sure. I thought maybe a single note, like maybe just an eighth note. In silver, mounted on
about a foot pedal.
A foot pedal. there you go. Hadn't thought of that one.
You know, because it would be, you know, you could make it really nice and small.
Yeah.
And yet it would be very distinctive of, you know, of the piano itself.
That's true. Thank you. I had not thought of that at all.
I don't know how difficult it would be.
What, Jay?
I don't know how difficult it would be to create it, but having a clip in the shape of a curved piano would be interesting. You know, that little swirl they have down at the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Some of these things are, you know, I just have to draw the line somewhere on what I know how to do. And when you start having custom clips made and such like that, you run the price of the thing up so much, and you have to wonder if it's really worth it or not. You know, the clips I'll tell you the truth. When I decided I wanted to put a clip on, I wanted to offer a clip with it. The problem is finding clips that you can buy that look good and that you can get, you know, when you need them. And there is nobody in the United States selling clips, period. And I finally found a place in England. It's down in Devon, in the southwest of England, and they're mostly in the business of parts for people that make pen turners and stuff like that. And that's their business, and they have a really good selection of clips at very reasonable prices. And you know, just nice, plain, elegant looking clips. So that's who I'm going with is theirs. And the good thing is that mailing them across the ocean doesn't cost very much because they're so light.
So do you use the same, well, maybe back up, the new pen that you have coming out, is it going to be the same dimensions as the previous pen?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're basically all the same pen when you get right down to it. You know,
Same material.
yeah, well, the same material. Okay, here's the Mars rover and the piano pen side by side there. I have trouble with this here. You can see they're the same size. The sections are the same. I mean, they're identical as far as the section is concerned. I happen to like a big pen myself, so these all tend to be fairly big. The barrels are 14 millimeter diameter. The grips are around 11. So, you know, that's, people have asked me, why don't you make a smaller pen? Well, maybe I will. Like, it's kind of like, it's like the clips and things, one thing at a time, you know?
Okay, smaller.
But they all use the same nibs, and you know, basically from Franklin Christoph, I can get gold nibs, black steel nibs, or stainless steel nibs. You know, just original, and they all have that pre-tested feature, ready to go. They all screw in, so it's a very easy swap. And I just enjoy doing this. It's so much fun. I have sold Moonwalk pens from Perth, Australia, to Vienna, Austria, and everywhere in between. Going.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool.
It is, and you know, people buy these, and there's email back and forth, and so I now know people in all these places, you know, all across Canada and the U.S. and Singapore and Hong Kong, and just, you know, it's just been fun. It really has. The correspondence has been as much fun as the pens.
Oh, that's very cool. Do you sign your pens anywhere?
I do on the limited editions, yes. Mm-hmm. I sign them on them. I sign right around the top of the barrel so that when the cap's on, the signature is covered up. Okay. But when you take the cap off, it's right around there.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's under, I sign it before we apply the ceramic coating. So it's protected by that coating. It won't wear off.
Interesting.
Anybody have any questions for John? Feel free to ask.
Well, I appreciate all of you coming today, and you can contact me. It's Moonwalk Pen. Moonwalk Pen at jehubbard.com. And I'm always happy to correspond with you and answer questions or sell you a pen or whatever it is you want, you know? So, and there it is. Okay, Jake's got it up there. You got the Mars rover at the top, the Moonwalk next, the two sleeves there. And I had not let them in on the piano pen at the point where that picture was taken, but I always appreciate Larry's enthusiasm about these things.
Very nice.
All right, folks, before we go, it's still open if y'all are wanting to ask any questions, or have we covered about everything we needed to cover?
I'm good.
Well,
all right.
I'll tell you this, my wife is a really good actor. She is a singer, dancer, director, written a couple of plays, really good like that. And she has a part right now in Spamalot, the Monty Python play, and she's been out rehearsing this afternoon and came back hungry. So I've got to deal with that. I think they've worked really hard. There's a lot of dancing and production numbers in this silly thing, but it is so funny.
And how is your kitty cat involved? I saw one going by one time.
Oh, did Oliver come by?
I went through the doorway kind of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oliver is he's intimately involved in all this. Once I laid all these things on my desk to show you folks, he got up here and moved them all around a little bit, as cats have to do. Yeah, his name is Oliver Twist, and he's a black and white tuxedo. And then my other cat, who is here now, her name is Katie, and she's a little gray cat, and she's about half his size, and they do not like each other.
Really?
No, they do not. But they each have their own personality. She's our official hostess for the house. I'm surprised she hadn't gotten up here on TV. And Oliver, on the other hand, is the cuddle cat. He likes to just cuddle up with you, and he's got that beautiful black coat, just like a fur coat. So they're both fun.
Oh,
I grew up with cats. So I can't stay away from them. Well, thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you.
Been a pleasure. I'll get Larry. Larry and Jake, keep on sending me the link for these things, and I'll jump back on.
Yeah. Well, folks. Well, first of all, thank you, John, for coming aboard today, and everybody else for taking the time to get on here today. And with that, John, I'll talk to you later, and we'll get back to you soon. Appreciate it, everybody.
See you. Nice to see you.
Wow. Thank you, John. Good to see everybody.
Bye-bye.